All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most thrilling, high-stakes narratives in modern history. We're uncovering the absolutely cutthroat David versus Goliath story behind the device that literally unified the entire world in real time. I'm talking, of course, about the television. We're going to look at the visionaries who fought for it, the immense fortunes on the line, and the astonishing truth about how it actually came to be. So, if I asked you right now who invented the television, you'd probably picture this massive corporate research lab filled with scientists in white coats, backed by endless funding from a tech giant. And, while that's partly the story of how television was commercialized and how it completely disrupted the absolute supremacy of radio back in the 20th century, the actual genesis of the invention, it's something entirely different and, honestly, way more surprising. Section 1. Two Visions of the Future. Sarnoff versus Farnsworth. To really grasp how electronic television was born, we've got to look at our two main characters, because they could not be more different. On one side, you have David Sarnoff. He's the deeply ambitious, ruthlessly driven general manager of RCA. Sarnoff essentially built a massive media empire by owning over 2,000 radio patents. He literally turned his competitors into his customers because anyone making a radio had to pay him a licensing fee. He saw the entire ecosystem of the industry. On the other side, nearly 2,000 miles away in Idaho, we have Philo Farnsworth, not a corporate titan at all. He was a shy, 14-year-old potato farmer's son. Farnsworth was an idealist, a kid who tinkered with crystal radios and idolized inventors like Edison and Tesla. Two completely different worlds right on a collision course. Now, schemes for mechanical television had existed for a while, but they all kept failing. Get this, Farnsworth actually solved the ultimate technological hurdle of electronic television just by staring at his dad's potato field. He noticed these neat parallel plow lines in the dirt, and a light bulb just went off. He realized you could scan a visual image electronically, line by line, the exact same way your eye reads a page of a book. By scanning it dozens of times per second and transmitting those signals across the airways at the speed of light, you could send moving pictures. Think about that. A 14-year-old kid had just conceived what the greatest scientific minds of his time totally couldn't figure out.
Section 2. The Race for Television. The Battle Begins.
Okay, so with this brilliant idea in his head, Farnsworth sets up a tiny laboratory in California, totally unaware of the massive corporate titan back east. And his progress was just incredibly scrappy. He somehow manages to secure a $25,000 investment from the Crocker family, but he painfully had to give up a 60% share of his baby just to get that cash. Then his first prototype actually fails. The negatively charged electrons just weren't sticking to the screen. But Farnsworth pivots. He figures out he needs the most photopositive element he can find to attract them, so he switches to cesium. And it worked. Miraculously, he gets this incredible light machine up and running, holds a press conference, and the San Francisco Chronicle snaps a photo that would change his life and send shockwaves all the way to David Sarnoff's desk. Well, Sarnoff sees this news, and he absolutely panics. He instantly recognizes that television could completely disrupt his iron grip on the radio market. I mean, if people could see pictures, why on earth would they just listen? Sarnoff knew he had to own this technology, whatever the cost. So he recruits a brilliant Russian engineer named Vladimir Zworykin, who had actually been working on his own early television designs, and just hands him 4 times the budget Farnsworth was working with. Sarnoff really saw himself as a modern Vanderbilt or Carnegie, and he was completely ruthless. Even though Farnsworth had already submitted his patent in 1927 and got it approved by 1930, Sarnoff just flexes this massive corporate muscle. He announces a staggering $1 million investment to develop RC's own television. His philosophy was pretty much, if I can't buy a patent, I'll steal it, and if I can't steal it, I'll just bury my rival in delays until my team can copy it. Section 3. The Great Patent War. Courtroom Battle. Which inevitably brings us to a massive collision. Farnsworth, totally strapped for cash, actually takes RCA to patent court. And when you track how this timeline unfolds, you see the pressure really mount. RCA's lawyers mobilized their entire legal department to try and prove their guy, Zworykin, had described a working system first back in 1923, 4 years before Farnsworth's submission. This dragged Farnsworth into a 15-month legal nightmare. It cost him $30,000, which is over $500,000 in today's money, and it took a brutal physical and emotional toll, driving the young inventor to ulcers and heavy drinking. It totally looked like Goliath was going to win, but then an incredible turning point happens. Farnsworth's lawyers call his old high school science teacher, Justin Tolman, to the stand. RCA's lawyers immediately try to discredit him, asking what professional training he had, but Tolman delivers an absolute knockout blow. He testifies that way back in 1922, a 15-year-old Farnsworth hadn't just explained electronic television to him, he actually drew a picture of it, and that childhood sketch perfectly matched the 1930 patent. On July 22, 1935, the courts ruled in favor of the farm boy. Priority of invention was officially awarded to Philo Farnsworth. Against all the money, all the power, and all the lawyers of RCA, he actually won the right to manufacture his dream. Section 4. Victory, delay, and defeat. Delaying tactics. But, a piece of paper wasn't going to stop a guy like David Sarnoff. While Farnsworth is just stuck fighting endless legal injunctions, Sarnoff is pouring unimaginable resources into his own labs. He spent the modern equivalent of $165 million to give Zworykin the time, the tools, and the manpower to finally match Farnsworth's system, eventually hitting 441 lines of resolution at 30 frames per second. Farnsworth had spent less than a tenth of that amount, but Sarnoff's tactics had him completely paralyzed. Sarnoff then uses his immense wealth to completely control the narrative. At the 1939 New York World's Fair, with 44 million people in attendance, Sarnoff literally steps in front of the cameras. He announces the birth of television, broadcasting the signals straight from the Empire State Building, and shamelessly takes all the credit for the invention. Farnsworth, the legally recognized creator, just had to watch helplessly. The hidden power of television was that it created a perceived reality, and Farnsworth simply couldn't outshout Sarnoff's massive publicity machine. Eventually, to put out their best model, RCA actually had to swallow their pride and buy the rights to use Farnsworth's patents, which was a complete reversal of how they usually did business. It was the payout Farnsworth had always wanted. But just when it seemed he might finally capitalize on his life's work, fate stepped in. On December 7, 1941, the U.S. entered World War II. Almost overnight, all manufacturing was diverted to the war effort. Commercial television was literally put on hold for 6 long years. And here is the absolute heartbreak of this story. Patents only last for 17 years. The war tragically ran out the clock on Farnsworth's rights. By the time 1946 rolled around, just as the public was finally ready to embrace television, his patents expired. That meant anyone, including David Sarnoff and RCA, could now use his technology without paying him a single dime.
Section 5. A bittersweet vindication. The Golden Age.
As the war ends, the golden age of television really kicks off, and the post-WW2 explosion of this technology was staggering. In just 3 years, the number of televisions in U.S. living rooms skyrocketed from 40,000 to over 9 million. In RCA, their profits jumped from $9 million in 1940 to nearly $50 million by 1950. Sarnoff had fully cemented his media empire, racking up vast wealth that Farnsworth was completely locked out of. But Farnsworth's story doesn't just end with a corporate balance sheet. Jump forward with me to 1969. An unprecedented 600 million people tune in to watch humanity walk on the moon. And one of those 600 million people is Philo Farnsworth, sitting quietly on his living room sofa, watching this historic broadcast through the very machine he dreamed up while looking at plow lines in a potato field. He turns to his wife, Pam, and simply says, "This makes it all worthwhile." In that incredible moment of absolute global unity, watching the largest audience ever assembled in human history, he received his final redemption. He knew, despite the lost fortunes and the brutal corporate wars, he had truly connected the world. Sarnoff definitely built the empire, and he for sure took the lion's share of the fortune. But history recognizes Philo Farnsworth as the true creator of one of the most significant inventions of the 20th century, which leaves us with a really fascinating question. If Goliath wins the fortune, but David wins history, who is the true victor? What kind of legacy will you leave behind? Thank you for joining me on this explainer. I hope this changes the way you look at the screen in front of you. Keep exploring and keep questioning.